When I returned from my business trip, I expected nothing more than a warm greeting, a familiar face, maybe a cup of coffee waiting for me. But instead, as I approached the entrance to my building, the doorman, Tom, stepped forward, blocking my way. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes, you can't come in," he said, holding out an envelope. My heart raced as I stared at him, my mind unable to process what was happening. He was always polite, always courteous, but today, his face was different. There was something cold in his eyes, something that told me this was not just a simple mistake. "What is this?" I asked, my voice betraying none of the confusion and fear I felt inside. Tom didn't answer, only gestured toward the envelope in his hand. I took it, my fingers trembling slightly. As I opened it, I realized that the letter was from my son, Mark, and his wife, Alyssa. It was a letter informing me that I was no longer welcome in my own home. They had decided, without my knowledge, to sell the apartment that had been mine for over 30 years. The place where I raised my children, where I spent countless nights with my late husband, now no longer belonged to me. My mind went numb as I stood there, unable to make sense of it. The place that had always been home was now just a building, a place I no longer had a right to call my own. I looked at Tom one last time, but he said nothing more, just stepped aside as I walked past him, barely able to keep my composure. As I entered the building, the silence in the lobby felt like a weight pressing down on me. The place I had walked into so many times before now felt unfamiliar, like it was no longer mine. I couldn't believe what I had just read. How could they do this to me? After everything I had done for them, after everything I had given, how could they simply discard me like this? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong, but I had no idea how deep the betrayal ran. As I walked up the stairs to my apartment, the reality of what was happening slowly sank in. I was alone, and I was being pushed out of my own life. As I closed the door behind me, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The letter from Mark and Alyssa was still clutched in my hand, and I couldn't seem to stop reading it over and over in my mind. The words, cold and impersonal, echoed through my head like a cruel joke. "We've decided it's best for you to move out, Mom," it said. "The apartment is too much for you to handle on your own." It was as if 30 years of memories meant nothing, as if my life had no value anymore. The walls around me, once so familiar, now felt suffocating, as if they were closing in on me. I walked through the living room, my footsteps hollow in the silence. The place where my children grew up, where laughter echoed in every room, now felt like a ghost of its former self. I moved to the window and looked out at the city below, trying to gather my thoughts. The skyline had changed so much over the years, but this view had always been mine, always felt like home. And yet, today, it was just another reminder of how far I had fallen. I closed my eyes, but the image of Alyssa's face, the way she had smiled so sweetly when I arrived at the building earlier, kept flashing in my mind. I had always trusted her, treated her like family. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had been part of her plan all along. She had always been distant, cold even, but I had never imagined she would do something like this. It was hard to fathom that she, of all people, could betray me so completely. I thought about Mark, my son. How had he allowed this to happen? How had he become so distant? I had raised him to be a better man, one who would never turn his back on family, on the people who loved him. And yet, here I was, discarded like an afterthought. It was as if I didn't matter anymore. I wandered through the apartment, my hands trembling as I touched the furniture that had been part of my life for so long. The couch where we sat together on holidays, the dining table where we shared meals, the pictures on the wall that captured so many happy moments. Each piece of furniture, each memory, now felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. I walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The silence was deafening. There had been a time when this room was filled with the sound of my husband's laughter, the two of us planning our future together, dreaming of the years we would have. But now, he was gone, and I was left alone, not just with my grief, but with the overwhelming realization that I had no place left in this world. The apartment wasn't just a building. It was the last piece of the life I had built. And now, they were taking that from me too. I had given them everything. And this was how they repaid me. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest, and walked to the closet. My mind raced as I thought about what to do next. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. I wasn't going to let them think they could push me out so easily. But what could I do? I was just one person, alone against the very people I had trusted. I took a deep breath and pulled myself together. I had always been strong, always been the one to hold everything together. I wasn't going to let this break me. Not yet. I looked around the room once more, my gaze lingering on the bed where I had spent so many nights with my husband. It felt like a lifetime ago, like a different life entirely. But I couldn't afford to dwell on the past. Not now. Not when everything was slipping through my fingers. I walked back into the living room and picked up the phone. I needed to make a plan. I needed to find a way to protect myself, to make sure they didn't get away with this. The letter had said I had to move out, but it didn't say when. I still had time. And in that time, I would figure out exactly what to do. I wasn't going to let them win. Not without a fight. The next morning, I sat in the living room, staring at the letter again, trying to make sense of it. The cold words seemed to blur the longer I looked at them. It didn't make sense. Why would Mark and Alyssa do this to me? I had spent years of my life supporting them, caring for their needs, helping them build their lives. And now, after everything, they were just throwing me out, discarding me as if I didn't matter. My mind was spinning, but a small voice inside kept pushing me to stay calm, to think this through. I had always been a fighter. I had fought for everything I had, for everything I loved. I wasn't going to let them take that from me without a fight. I picked up the phone and dialed Linda's number. Linda had always been there for me, a true friend through thick and thin. She picked up on the second ring. "Rebecca, how are you?" she asked, her voice warm, filled with genuine concern. "Not good," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to talk to you." "Of course, I'm here for you," she replied. I could hear the sincerity in her voice. "It's Mark and Alyssa. They've decided to sell my apartment without telling me, and they want me to move out." Just like that, no warning, no explanation. I paused, trying to hold back the anger and hurt that was bubbling up inside. "What do I do, Linda? What am I supposed to do?" "Rebecca," Linda said softly, "you need to take control. This is your home, your life. Don't let them push you out like this. You're not helpless. You're not some old woman waiting to be discarded." Her words hit me like a wave, and for the first time that morning, I felt a glimmer of hope. She was right. I wasn't helpless. I had spent years building this life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me without a fight. "I know," I whispered. "I know. I don't know where to start." "Start by finding out what they're really up to," Linda advised. "Get a lawyer if you have to, but don't let them get away with this. They're taking advantage of you, and you can't let them." I felt a sense of resolve settle over me as I listened to Linda's words. She was right. I couldn't just sit back and let them ruin everything I had worked for. I had to act. "Thank you," I said, my voice stronger now. "I'll figure it out. I'll make sure they don't get away with this." I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a few moments, letting the weight of Linda's words sink in. She was right. I had to fight back. I couldn't let Mark and Alyssa take everything from me. I had spent my life building this home, this life, and I wasn't going to let them destroy it just because they thought they could get away with it. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. The view was still the same, but now it felt different. It was as if the world outside was moving on, while I was stuck here, fighting for something that should have been mine all along. But I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. I had fought too long and too hard to let them win. I wasn't going to let them take my life from me, not without a fight. I turned away from the window and walked back into the living room. I needed to take action. I needed to figure out how to protect myself, how to make sure I wasn't pushed out of my own life. The first step, I knew, was to get some answers. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I had to confront Mark and Alyssa, ask them what was really going on, and make sure they knew that I wasn't going to just sit back and let them take everything from me. The next few days felt like a blur, each one slipping into the next as I tried to make sense of everything. I knew I had to confront Mark and Alyssa, but the thought of it filled me with a mix of dread and determination. I had raised him, taught him right from wrong, and yet here he was, turning his back on me. I couldn't let that slide. I couldn't let them take everything I had built. I made the decision to meet them, to get the answers I needed. I called Mark and told him I wanted to talk. He hesitated for a moment, then agreed to meet me at a cafe nearby. The morning of our meeting, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself. I was older now, but I still had the same strength in me that I had. Always had. I wasn't going to let them break me. I was going to stand my ground. When I arrived at the cafe, Mark was already sitting at a table, looking down at his phone. He looked up when I approached, his face lighting up in a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mom, hey," he said, his voice strained. I sat down across from him, my heart pounding in my chest. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm, steady. He nodded, pushing his phone aside. "What's going on, Mark?" I asked, my eyes searching his face. "Why are you doing this to me?" For a moment, he didn't say anything, just stared at me like he was trying to come up with the right words. I could see the discomfort in his eyes, the guilt, but also something else. Something colder. "It's just the way things are, Mom," he said finally, his voice lacking conviction. "You're not getting any younger. The apartment is too much for you to handle." His words stung, but I didn't let them show. "I've been handling this apartment for over 30 years, I said, my voice steady. "I've taken care of everything. This is my home, Mark." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands fidgeting with the edge of his coffee cup. "I know, but Alyssa and I have been talking, and we think it's time for you to move on. You can't keep living here by yourself." "You think I can't live here by myself?" I asked, my voice rising slightly, but I quickly calmed myself. "This is my life, my home. You can't just decide that for me." Mark looked away, his gaze shifting to the window as if he couldn't face me. I watched him for a moment, waiting for him to say something, but he didn't. "What's really going on, Mark?" I pressed, my voice soft but firm. "Is this what Alyssa wants? Is she the one pushing you to do this?" He looked up at me then, and for a brief moment, I saw the truth in his eyes. "She thinks it's the best thing for everyone," he said, his voice quiet. "She wants to move on, start fresh. She wants us to have more space, more freedom." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "What about my freedom, Mark?" He didn't answer. He just stared at his hands, his fingers tightening around his coffee cup. I realized then that this wasn't just about the apartment. It was about everything. Alyssa had been slowly pushing me out of their lives, bit by bit, until there was nothing left. She had manipulated Mark, made him believe this was the only option, the only way forward. And now, here I was, facing a son who had been swallowed by her lies. I stood up slowly, the weight of everything crashing down on me. "I'm not leaving," I said, my voice steady now, more certain than ever. "I won't let you take my home. You can't just decide this for me." Mark looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and confusion. "Mom, this isn't personal," he said, but I could hear the lie in his voice. "It's just about what's best for everyone." "No," I said, shaking my head. "This is personal. This is about you choosing her over me. You've been so blinded by her that you can't see what's really happening." I turned to walk away, but before I left, I looked back at him one last time. "I won't give up my life, Mark. I won't let you or anyone else take it from me." And with that, I walked out of the cafe, knowing that I had made the first step in taking back control of my life. The days following my conversation with Mark were a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that seemed to hang over me like a dark cloud. Every room in the apartment felt foreign now, as if the walls themselves were echoing with the absence of everything I had worked for. I had spent so many years making this place a home, and yet, it felt as though it was being ripped away from me by people I had trusted, people I had given everything to. But I knew I couldn't just sit back and wait for them to take it all from me. I had to take action. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I needed someone who could help me understand my options, who could protect me from the betrayal that was unfolding right before my eyes. The lawyer's office was cold, sterile, the kind of place where decisions are made without emotion. I sat in the waiting room, my hands clenched tightly in my lap, trying to keep my thoughts from racing. When they called my name, I stood up, straightened my blouse, and walked into the office. The lawyer, a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes, didn't waste any time. "I've looked over the letter your son and daughter-in-law sent you," he said, his voice professional and detached. "They've no legal grounds to force you out of your own home." I felt a small sense of relief wash over me, but it didn't last long. "But," he continued, "you may face challenges. If they're trying to sell the apartment, they might be planning something else, something that could make it harder for you to stay." I nodded, taking in his words. "So what can I do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk. "First, we need to gather evidence. We need to show that they're trying to take advantage of you, that this isn't just about the apartment. Once we have everything in place, we can file for legal protection. That will give you time to figure out what you want to do next. I felt a sense of determination start to build inside me. I wasn't going to let them push me out of my own home. Not without a fight. The lawyer gave me a list of things I needed to do, and I left the office feeling a little more in control, but still unsure of what lay ahead. The next few days were filled with long hours of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings. I started reaching out to people who might have seen something, people who could help me prove that this was all part of a bigger plan. I talked to the doorman, Tom, who had been the one to hand me the letter in the first place. At first, he was hesitant, but eventually, he agreed to speak with me. I've seen a lot of things around here, Mrs. Hayes, he said, his voice low. Alyssa has been talking about the apartment for months, ever since your husband passed. She said something about selling it, about getting you out so she and Mark could have more space. His words confirmed what I had feared. Alyssa had been planning this for a while, and now, she was using Mark to carry out her plans. I didn't think much of it at first, Tom continued, but now I see what she's been doing. I thanked him for his honesty and left the building feeling even more determined. The pieces were starting to fall into place. This wasn't just about the apartment. It was about control, about them trying to take away everything I had worked for, everything I had built. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I was going to fight for what was mine, for my life, my home, and my dignity. The next step was to talk to Mark again. I had to make him understand what was really going on, and maybe, just maybe, I could get through to him before it was too late. The days felt longer as I prepared myself for another confrontation with Mark. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. He had been distant for so long, but now, with everything on the line, I had to break through to him. I couldn't afford to let him slip further away. The thought of him choosing Alyssa over me, of him turning his back on everything we had built, was unbearable. But I had to be strong. I wasn't going to give up without a fight. The lawyer had given me the tools I needed to protect myself, but it was up to me to make Mark see the truth. I called him again, asking him to meet me at a park near the apartment. This time, I wouldn't be as calm. I had to let him know just how deeply this betrayal cut. When I arrived, Mark was already there, standing by a bench, looking uncomfortable. As I approached, he straightened up, trying to act like everything was normal. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes avoided mine. I stood in front of him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, but there was no hiding the anger behind my words. He nodded, his eyes flickering to the ground. "Mom, I don't know what else to say," he muttered. "I've told you, Alyssa, and I think this is for the best. It's just the way things have to be." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "For the best? You think it's for the best to throw your own mother out of her home?" My voice was rising now, and I could feel my anger bubbling to the surface. "After everything I've done for you, for this family, you think it's okay to just discard me like this?" Mark looked up at me then, his face twisted in frustration. "You're not getting it, Mom. You don't understand. Alyssa and I need this. We need the space. The apartment's too much for you to handle on your own, and it's just not practical anymore." I shook my head in disbelief. "Practical? You think this is about practicality?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. "This isn't about practicality, Mark. This is about you choosing her over me. This is about you letting her tear apart everything we've worked for. Do you even care about what this is doing to me? Do you even care about what this means for our family?" Mark flinched, his face hardening. "I care about you, Mom. I always have. But Alyssa is my wife. I have to put her first now. You have to understand that." I could feel my chest tightening as his words hit me like a punch. "You're putting her first?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "What about me, Mark? What about your mother? You're letting her manipulate you, and you don't even see it." I could feel the tears welling up, but I fought them back. I wasn't going to cry in front of him. I wasn't going to let him see how badly this hurt. He had to see what he was doing. He had to understand. "I've been nothing but good to you, Mark," I continued, my voice shaking with the weight of everything I had kept inside. "I've given you everything I had, and this is how you repay me? You let her take everything from me. You're letting her destroy our family, and you don't even care." There was a long pause. Mark didn't speak, just stood there, his face unreadable. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it was buried under the coldness, under the layers of lies and manipulation that Alyssa had wrapped around him. "I don't want to do this, Mark," I said, softly, taking a step closer. "But I'm not going to let you do this to me. I won't let her win. You need to wake up before it's too late." He finally met my gaze, his expression softening for a moment. "I don't want to hurt you, Mom," he said quietly. "But Alyssa, she's my life now." My heart sank as I realized just how deep this had gone, how far Mark had drifted away from everything we had. But I couldn't give up on him yet. "You're not thinking clearly," I said, my voice firm again. "You're letting her control everything. And if you don't stop, you'll lose everything. You'll lose me, and you'll lose your family." Mark didn't respond, just stood there, lost in his thoughts. I turned and walked away, knowing that I had done everything I could. The ball was in his court now. He had to choose, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. The next few days passed in a haze of frustration and disbelief. I had done everything I could think of to reach Mark, to make him understand the gravity of what was happening. But every time I spoke to him, he became more distant, more cold. It was as if he had completely shut me out, as if Alyssa had already won. I spent my days pacing around the apartment, making phone calls, meeting with the lawyer, but each time I returned to the apartment, the walls seemed to close in on me a little more. The place that had once been filled with laughter, with the voices of my children, now felt empty, lifeless. It was as if my entire life had been reduced to a series of empty rooms. But I couldn't let that consume me. I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't let them win. Then, one afternoon, as I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, I was stunned to see Mark standing there, his face tired, but soft, almost apologetic. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice low. "Can we talk?" My heart skipped a beat as I stepped back to let him in. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What is it, Mark?" He hesitated for a moment, then spoke, his words coming slowly. "I've been thinking about everything," he began, avoiding my gaze. "And I'm starting to realize that maybe I've been wrong." My breath caught in my throat, unsure if I was hearing him correctly. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep the hope from creeping into my voice. He finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with conflict. "Alyssa, she's been pushing me. I didn't see it at first, but now I realize she's been manipulating me. I've been so focused on her, so worried about keeping her happy, that I lost sight of what really matters." I stood there, speechless, trying to process what he was saying. You're saying you realize what's been going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded slowly. "I was blind, Mom. I couldn't see it. But now I can. And I know I've hurt you. I'm sorry." The weight of his words hit me like a wave, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had never expected this, never expected him to come to me like this, to admit that he had been wrong. But as I looked at him, I could see the pain in his eyes, the guilt that had been weighing on him. "I don't know what to do, Mom," he said, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to fix this, but I want to. I want to make things right." I felt a flicker of hope, but I knew it wasn't that simple. "It's not going to be easy, Mark," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You've hurt me. You've betrayed me. And it's going to take time for me to trust you again. But if you're really serious about making this right, then we can start over. But you have to choose. You have to choose what's more important, your family or her." He nodded, his face solemn. "I know, Mom. I know. I can't change what's been done, but I can change what happens next." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and for the first time in what felt like a long time, I felt a small spark of hope. It wasn't over. It wasn't too late. But it would take time, and it would take effort from both of us. As I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had hoped would always have my back, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I wasn't going to give up. Not yet. "All right," I said, taking a deep breath. "Let's start by being honest with each other. We have a long way to go, but we'll figure it out. Together." Mark gave me a small, tentative smile, and for the first time in days, I felt like there might be a chance to rebuild what had been broken. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a start. And that was all I needed for now. The days after Mark's admission were strange. I could sense a shift in him, a change that had been brewing for so long. He wasn't perfect, and the damage had already been done, but he was trying. And for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimmer of the son I used to know. We began talking more. He came over to the apartment more often, and we spent hours just sitting together, discussing everything that had happened. I could see how torn he was, how deeply he regretted what had transpired. And yet, every conversation also revealed how deep Alyssa's influence had been. She had been so determined, so convincing, that it had been almost impossible for him to see through her manipulations. But now, he was starting to question everything, and it was clear that he wasn't ready to walk away from her just yet. I had learned to temper my expectations. The road ahead would not be easy, but there was something different about the way he was looking at me now. I wasn't just the mother he had distanced himself from. I was the woman who had supported him through everything, who had always been there when he needed her. And maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to understand that. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. As the weeks went by, Mark and I started to rebuild our relationship. He came over often, sometimes just to sit with me in silence, other times to talk. It was slow, almost painfully slow, but it was progress. And that's all I could ask for. I knew that repairing the damage done to our relationship wasn't going to happen overnight. But with each passing day, I began to feel a little more like myself again. I wasn't just an afterthought in their lives anymore. I was reclaiming my place, my voice, and the power that had been taken from me. Alyssa, on the other hand, remained distant. She kept her distance, only appearing when absolutely necessary. It was clear that she didn't like the changes she saw in Mark, the way he was starting to question her every move. But I wasn't foolish. I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. And so, I braced myself for whatever was to come. I wasn't going to let her manipulate him again. But for now, I allowed myself to enjoy the small moments of progress. Mark was starting to see the truth, and that was all that mattered. We were beginning to rebuild what had been broken, and that was worth every moment of pain. But deep down, I knew the fight wasn't over. It would never be over until Alyssa's grip on him was finally broken. And I wasn't going to rest until that happened. As the weeks passed, I began to sense a shift in the way Mark was handling things. He had stopped making excuses for Alyssa, and though he still tried to justify some of her actions, the facade was starting to crack. He came to visit more often, and I could see the weight of his decisions in his eyes. He was torn between the woman he had chosen to be with and the mother who had always been there for him. But I knew, deep down, that it was only a matter of time before the truth would come to light. I had always been strong. I had raised Mark alone after his father passed, and I had taught him the value of family, loyalty, and respect. And now, I was hoping that those lessons would resonate in him, that he would see the damage Alyssa was causing, not just to me, but to him too. One evening, as the sun began to set, I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, I was surprised to see Alyssa standing on the other side. She looked almost nervous, which was something I had never seen before. "Rebecca, we need to talk," she said, her voice softer than usual. I stood there for a moment, trying to gauge her intentions. What could she possibly want after everything that had happened? But I stepped aside and allowed her in. She hesitated as she entered the living room, clearly uncomfortable in the space that used to feel so familiar. "I don't know what to say," Alyssa began, wringing her hands together. "I know I've hurt you, and I know I've been manipulative. I've been wrong." The words came slowly, but they were words I never thought I would hear coming from her. It was hard to trust her, but part of me couldn't help but wonder if there was something genuine in her apology. "Alyssa, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you've done," I said, my voice steady but laced with the hurt that had built up over time. "You've tried to push me out of my own life, to take away everything I've worked for, and that's not something I can just forget." She nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I've realized how much I've lost, how much I've hurt Mark, and how much I've hurt you." I watched her for a moment, trying to read her. Was this just another act? Or was there something real behind those words? "What are you really saying, Alyssa?" I asked, my voice cautious. "What do you want from me?" She took a deep breath, looking down at the floor before meeting my gaze again. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Rebecca. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking for a chance to fix things, to make amends with you and Mark. I don't want to be the person I was before." There was a long pause, and I could feel the weight of the moment hanging in the air. It was hard to believe her, to accept that she was capable of change after everything that had happened. But then, I remembered something Mark had said, something that had stuck with me. "I know I've been wrong, and I don't want to lose you." I don't want to lose everything we had, he had told me. Maybe Alyssa, in her own way, was finally coming to the same realization. I can't promise anything, Alyssa, I said, my voice calm but firm. I can't just forgive you right now. But I'm willing to give you a chance to prove that you can change, that you can stop trying to tear us apart. She nodded, her face softening with a look of relief. Thank you. That's all I'm asking for. As I watched her leave that night, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of hope flicker inside me. It wasn't a resolution, not yet. But maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something better. Maybe, just maybe, the road to healing had finally begun. The following days were quiet, almost unnervingly so. Alyssa's visit had shaken me, but in a way that left me uncertain. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking a thin line, unsure of whether to trust her words or to guard myself against any further disappointment. Mark, on the other hand, had been more present than I had ever seen him in months. He called more often, came over more frequently, and seemed genuinely concerned. The guilt in his eyes was still evident, but it was accompanied by something new, regret, and perhaps a hint of hope. He didn't mention Alyssa much, but every time he did, it was clear that he was struggling with his loyalty to her and the love he had for me. I knew I couldn't expect a miracle overnight, but the fact that he was finally listening to me again, after everything, felt like a small victory. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table sipping my tea, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so my heart skipped a beat when I opened the door to find Mark standing there, his face serious, almost pained. Mom, we need to talk, he said quietly, stepping inside before I had a chance to say anything. I nodded, motioning for him to sit down. My mind raced with questions. Was this it? Was he finally going to make a decision, or was this another empty conversation? He sat down slowly, his hands resting nervously on his lap. He looked at me for a long time, as if trying to find the right words. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Mark started, his voice soft but firm. And about everything that's happened. I waited, my breath catching in my throat. What are you saying, Mark? I asked, trying to steady myself. I'm saying that I was wrong, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I let Alyssa manipulate me, and I've been blind to everything you've been telling me. You were right. She's been using me, using all of us. My heart ached as I listened to him. Hearing him say those words, finally seeing him acknowledge the truth, was a relief, but it didn't erase the pain of everything that had come before. I've been selfish, he continued, his eyes filling with tears. I thought I was doing what was best for us, but I was just listening to her. I didn't see how it was hurting you, how it was tearing our family apart. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I held back. It wasn't that simple. It's not just about you, Mark, I said, my voice steady but firm. It's about the years I've spent caring for this family, giving everything to make sure you and Alyssa were okay. And this is how I'm repaid? By being pushed out. He looked down at his hands, his face a mixture of guilt and regret. I know, Mom, he said quietly. I can't change what happened, but I want to make it right. I want to make up for the hurt I've caused. His words were sincere, but part of me couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late. I had been so strong for so long, but now, the weight of everything we had been through felt almost unbearable. I don't know if you can make it right, Mark, I said softly, my eyes locking with his. But I'm willing to try, for your sake. For us. He nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I'll do whatever it takes, Mom. I'll fix this. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be fixed overnight. But maybe, just maybe, we could start rebuilding the trust we had lost. I wasn't sure how long it would take, or if we'd ever truly be the same, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like there was a chance. We'll take it one step at a time, I said, my voice soft but resolute. And we'll see where it leads. Mark nodded. And for a brief moment, we both sat there in silence, knowing that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but hopeful that it would be worth it. As the days passed, I started to see the slow but steady changes in Mark. He came by the apartment more often, and each visit felt different. He seemed less distracted, more focused, as if he was truly present, trying to make amends for everything that had happened. Alyssa, however, remained a mystery. She didn't visit, didn't call, and I knew better than to expect any drastic changes from her anytime soon. I wasn't naive enough to believe that everything was fixed because Mark had shown up to apologize. But a part of me, that small flicker of hope I had been holding on to, allowed me to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be better. That maybe we could rebuild what had been torn apart. One evening, as I was sitting in the living room, looking through some old photo albums, I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I hesitated. But when I opened it, to my surprise, it was Alyssa standing there. She looked different, less sure of herself, almost vulnerable. "Rebecca, can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative. I froze for a moment, unsure of how to react. After everything that had happened, after all the lies and manipulation, I wasn't sure I was ready to open that door again. But, despite everything, I stepped aside and let her in. She stood in the doorway for a moment, almost as if she were waiting for some kind of invitation to speak. When I didn't say anything, she finally spoke, her voice softer than usual. "I know I've done some terrible things," she said, looking down at the floor. "I know I've hurt you, and I've hurt Mark. I can't take that back, and I don't expect you to forgive me, not right away, at least. But I want to try. I want to make things right, if that's even possible." Her words, unexpected and raw, took me by surprise. I wasn't sure if I believed her, but there was something in the way she said it that made me pause. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't making excuses. She was just speaking honestly. I nodded slowly, my arms crossed, not sure if I should let my guard down. "What exactly do you want, Alyssa?" I asked, my voice steady but cautious. "I want to be better," she replied, her eyes finally meeting mine. "I want to stop being the person I was. I've seen how much damage I've caused, and I've seen how much I've hurt Mark. I was so focused on getting what I wanted that I didn't see what was really happening. And now, I realize I was wrong." It wasn't easy to believe her. After all, she had worked so hard to push me out, to isolate Mark from me. But there was something in the way she said it, something in her eyes, that made me wonder if she truly understood the depth of the pain she had caused. "You can't just take back everything that's happened," I said quietly. "You've hurt me, Alyssa. You've hurt our family. It's not just about the apartment. It's about everything." She nodded, her shoulders sagging. "I know," she whispered. "I can't fix everything, but I'm willing to try. I just want to start making it right, if you'll let me." I stood there, silent, my mind racing. Was this genuine? Or was it just another manipulation? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't move forward without some kind of resolution. And if there was a chance, just a small one, that Alyssa was finally realizing the damage she had done, maybe I had to give her that chance. "I'm not going to forgive you today, Alyssa," I said, my voice firm. "But I'm willing to give you the chance to prove that you can change, that you can be the person you claim to want to be. But this time, it's on my terms." She looked at me for a long time, and I could see the relief flood her face. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said softly, the sincerity in her voice clear. "Thank you," I replied, though I wasn't sure if I meant it yet. The road ahead was still long, and there was so much more that needed to be done. But maybe, just maybe, we were finally starting to move in the right direction.